Day Kim stared out the window of the diplomatic vessel and wondered how badly he had messed up his life to end up here. The stars looked different this far from Earth. Colder somehow. More indifferent to whether he lived or died in the next few hours. "Stop looking so grim," Hannah Park said, dropping into the seat beside him. She had been his best friend since their academy days, back when they both thought diplomatic service would be about fancy parties and important handshakes. "You'll do fine." "The last 3 teams didn't do fine," Day reminded her. "One got sent home in shame. Another started a trade war. The third one, well, we don't talk about the third one. Which is exactly why they picked you." Hannah smiled, though it didn't quite reach her eyes. "You're unconventional. You think differently. You fix problems in weird ways." "You mean I'm expendable?" "That too." Captain Wu's voice crackled over the intercom. "We're approaching Valoran space. All diplomatic personnel to the briefing room." Day's stomach twisted. The Valorans were one of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. They had been traveling between stars when humans were still figuring out fire. Their empire stretched across hundreds of systems, and their technology made Earth's greatest inventions look like children's toys. And somehow, Day was supposed to convince them that humanity deserved a place among the galactic community. The briefing room was small and smelled like recycled air and nervous sweat. Captain Wu stood at the front, his weathered face serious. Behind him, a holographic image showed the Valoran homeworld, a planet that glowed with soft blue light even from space. "Listen carefully," Wu said. "The Valorans value formality above all else. Bow when you meet Queen Nira. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not make sudden movements. And for the love of everything, do not touch anyone." Day raised his hand. "What if they offer to shake hands?" "They won't. Their species doesn't do physical contact with outsiders. It's considered extremely aggressive." "Right. No touching. Got it." Hannah shot him a worried look. Day had a habit of forgetting important details when he was nervous. The Valoran vessel appeared on their view screen an hour later. It was beautiful in a way that made Day's chest ache. The ship looked like it had been grown rather than built. All flowing curves and crystalline surfaces that caught the starlight and bent it into rainbows. A voice filled the bridge, speaking in perfect English with an accent that sounded like wind chimes. "Human vessel, you are cleared to dock. Queen Nira will see your representatives in the Grand Hall." Day's hands were shaking as he put on his formal diplomatic uniform. The dark blue jacket felt too tight. Everything felt too tight. He was about to meet an alien queen who had been alive longer than human civilization. "Breathe," Hannah whispered as they walked through the docking tube. "Just breathe and remember your training." The inside of the Valoran ship took Day's breath away. The walls glowed with soft light, and the air smelled like ozone and something sweet he couldn't identify. Everything was larger than human scale, designed for beings that stood nearly 8 feet tall. 2 Valoran guards met them at the entrance. They were stunning. Their skin seemed to be made of living crystal that pulsed with inner light. Their eyes were large and luminous, shifting colors like opals. They wore no expressions that Day could read. "Follow," one of them said. The grand hall was enormous. The ceiling stretched up so high it disappeared into shadow. Hundreds of Valorans stood in perfect rows on either side of a central walkway. At the far end, on a throne that looked carved from a single massive diamond, sat Queen Nira. She was larger than the other Valorans. Her crystalline skin shot through with veins of gold light. She wore robes that seemed to be made of liquid starlight. Her face was beautiful and terrible and completely alien. Day's mind went blank. He was supposed to bow. He knew he was supposed to bow. But his feet kept walking, carrying him down that long walkway while hundreds of alien eyes watched his every step. When he reached the base of the throne, his brain finally kicked in. He bowed deeply, exactly as he'd been taught. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice somehow steady, "I bring greetings from Earth and the human people. We come seeking friendship and mutual understanding." Queen Nera studied him with eyes that held millennia of wisdom. When she spoke, her voice resonated through the hall like music. "You are very small," she said. Day blinked. Of all the responses he'd prepared for, that wasn't one of them. "Yes, Your Majesty," he said. "We're a young species. We have a lot of growing to do." Was that amusement flickering across her alien features? He couldn't tell. "Your previous representatives were disappointing," the Queen said. "They spoke of trade and treaties, but they did not understand. They did not see. Tell me, small human, what do you see when you look at my empire?" Day knew this was a test. The problem was, he had no idea what the right answer was supposed to be. So he told the truth. "I see something ancient and beautiful," he said quietly. "And I see something lonely." The hall went silent. Even the soft ambient hum of the ship seemed to stop. Hana made a small, horrified sound behind him. Queen Nera stood. She was massive, towering over Day like a statue carved from living light. She descended the steps of her throne, and Day's heart hammered against his ribs. She stopped inches away from him. This close, he could see that her eyes were the color of distant nebulas. "Explain," she commanded. Day swallowed hard. "You've been here for thousands of years. You've watched civilizations rise and fall. You're surrounded by subjects, but when was the last time someone really talked to you? Not at you, not to get something from you, but just talked?" The Queen stared at him for a long moment. Then, without thinking, Day did the worst possible thing. He extended his hand for a handshake. The hall erupted. Guards rushed forward. Hana grabbed his arm, trying to pull him back. The Valorans were shouting in their musical language, and Day realized with horror what he'd done. But Queen Nera raised one crystalline hand, and everyone froze. She looked at Day's outstretched hand, then at his face. Then, incredibly, she laughed. It was a sound like crystal bells, clear and bright and utterly unexpected. "You have no idea what you just did, do you?" she asked. "Challenged you to a death match?" Day guessed, his voice weak. "Yes." The Queen's eyes sparkled with something that might have been amusement. "But your apology is adequate, and your observation is more interesting than anything I have heard in 500 years. She turned to her court. "I will grant this human a private audience. Tomorrow. Alone." As the guards escorted them out, Hana grabbed Day's shoulders. "Do you have any idea how lucky you are to be alive right now?" Day nodded, still shaking. But as they walked back to their ship, he couldn't stop thinking about the Queen's laugh and the loneliness he'd seen in her ancient eyes. Maybe he hadn't messed this up after all. Day couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the moment over and over in his mind. The way Queen Nera had laughed. The way she'd looked at him like he was a puzzle she wanted to solve. "You're thinking too hard," Hana said from the doorway of his quarters. She carried 2 cups of coffee, the real kind from Earth that cost a fortune this far from home. "Here, you'll need this for tomorrow." "What if I mess it up again?" "You will definitely mess it up again." Hana sat down beside him. "But somehow, that's working for you. Just try not to start any wars, okay?" The next morning, a Valoran shuttle arrived to take Day to the Queen's private chambers. Hana wanted to come, but the message had been clear. The Queen would see Day alone. The room where they met was nothing like the Grand Hall. It was smaller, more intimate. The walls were transparent, showing the stars beyond. Queen Nera stood by the window, her crystalline form reflecting the starlight. "You came," she said without turning around. "You invited me. It would be rude to refuse. Most beings are terrified of me." She turned to face him. "You are terrified as well." I can see your heart beating faster, but you came anyway. Being scared doesn't mean you should hide, Day said. That's kind of humanity's whole thing, actually. We're scared of everything, but we do it anyway. The Queen gestured to a seat. It was too large for him, but he climbed into it anyway, feeling like a child in an adult's chair. Tell me about your world, she said. So Day told her. He talked about Earth's blue oceans and green forests, about cities that stretched to the sky and deserts that seemed to go on forever. He told her about music and art, about wars and peace, about the messy, chaotic beauty of human history. The Queen listened with an intensity that was almost overwhelming. She asked questions that no one had ever asked before. Not about technology or resources, but about feelings and dreams, and what it meant to be human. We are very old, she said finally. We Valorans have existed for millions of years. We have achieved perfection in many things. We do not age. We do not get sick. We have evolved beyond many of the limitations that plague younger species. That sounds amazing, Day said. It sounds lonely. The Queen's voice was soft. We have evolved beyond the need for companionship, for partnership, for love. We exist, we serve the Empire, and we endure. But we do not truly live. Day felt his chest tighten. How long have you been Queen? 3,247 years. And in all that time, have you ever just talked to someone? Like we're talking now? The Queen was quiet for a long moment. No, she said finally. I have given commands. I have made judgments. I have ruled. But I have not talked. Not like this. They met again the next day. And the day after that. Each time they talked for hours. Day brought her things from Earth, music files that made her tilt her head in wonder, pictures of art that made her ask questions about color and emotion. He even brought her a chocolate bar, which she examined like it was a precious artifact. You eat this for pleasure? She asked. Try it. Just a small piece. She broke off a tiny piece and placed it in her mouth. Her eyes went wide. This is extraordinary, she said. It has no nutritional value, but it makes me feel happy. That's the idea. Hana noticed the change in him after the first week. You're falling for her, she said. It wasn't a question. Don't be ridiculous. She's an alien queen who's 3,000 years old. I'm just a guy from Seoul who barely passed his diplomatic exams. Day, I've known you for 10 years. I know what you look like when you're in love. And this is it. He wanted to deny it, but he couldn't. Because Hana was right. Somewhere between the conversations about philosophy and the moments when Nira laughed at his terrible jokes, he had fallen completely and hopelessly in love with an alien queen. The problem was, he wasn't the only one who noticed. Officer Yuna was the one who discovered it. She was reviewing communication logs when she found encrypted messages between members of the Valoran High Council. Messages about the Queen's unusual behavior, about the human who was spending too much time in her presence. They're planning something, Yuna told Captain Wu. There's a faction that wants humanity eliminated before we become a threat, and they're angry that the Queen is showing us favor. Wu called an emergency meeting. We need to pull back. This is getting dangerous. No, Day said. If we pull back now, we confirm their fears. We show them we can't be trusted. And if you stay, you might get killed. Then I get killed, but at least I'll have tried. The cultural exchange ceremony was supposed to be a celebration. Representatives from dozens of Valoran worlds had gathered to witness humanity's presentation of music, dance, and art. Day had spent days preparing, working with Hana to create something that would show the best of what humans could offer. Queen Nira sat on her throne, watching with those ancient, luminous eyes. The ceremony was beautiful. Human musicians played alongside Valoran light singers, creating harmonies that had never existed before. Day didn't see the assassin until it was too late. The Valoran moved fast, faster than anything Day had ever seen. He raised a weapon that crackled with energy, aimed directly at the Queen's heart. Day didn't think. He just moved. He threw himself between the Queen and the blast. The energy hit him like a freight train, lifting him off his feet and throwing him across the floor. Pain exploded through his chest, white-hot and all-consuming. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was Nira's face, her eyes wide with shock and something that looked like fear. When he woke, he wasn't dead. That was surprising. The room around him was filled with soft blue light. Medical equipment hummed quietly, and sitting beside his bed, her crystalline hand resting near his, was Queen Nira. "You are the most foolish creature I have ever met," she said softly. Her voice sounded strange, almost broken. "Did we get him?" Day's voice was barely a whisper. "The assassin has been captured. You, however, nearly died." Her hand moved closer to his. Not touching, but close enough that he could feel warmth radiating from her crystalline skin. "Why did you do that?" "Couldn't let anyone hurt you. I am 3,000 years old. I have survived wars and plagues and cosmic disasters. And yet you, a fragile human who has lived barely 30 years, threw yourself in front of certain death to save me." "Yeah, well." Day tried to smile, but it hurt. "I'm kinda stupid that way." The Queen stood, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked uncertain, vulnerable. "I used forbidden magic to save your life," she said quietly. "Royal healing arts that have not been used in 1,000 years. In doing so, I have created a bond between us that my people consider sacred." "What kind of bond?" "The kind that changes everything." She looked at him with those nebula-colored eyes. "I do not understand what I am feeling. For 3,000 years I have been alone, complete, sufficient unto myself. And then a small, foolish human stumbled into my court and made me laugh, made me think, made me feel." Day's heart was racing, and it had nothing to do with his injuries. "Your Majesty," he started, but she raised a hand. "My name is Nira," she said. "When we are alone, use my name." "Nira," he repeated, and the word felt like magic on his tongue. "I think I'm falling in love with you." She stared at him for a long moment. Then, incredibly, she smiled. It was small and uncertain, like she'd forgotten how. "That," she said, "is the most terrifying thing anyone has ever said to me." Outside the medical bay, the Valoran High Council was gathering. And in the shadows, those who wanted humanity destroyed were making their plans. The Valoran High Council chambers were cold and imposing. 12 of the oldest and most powerful Valarans in the Empire sat in a semicircle, their crystalline faces unreadable. Queen Nira stood before them, regal and alone. Dai watched from a medical chair that hovered beside her. His chest still hurt where the energy blast had nearly killed him, but the Valoran healing technology had done its job. He would live. The question was, for how long? "You have broken sacred law," Ambassador Tay declared. His voice was hard and cold. "The royal healing bond has not been formed in over a millennium. It is forbidden to use it on an outsider." "I am your queen," Nira said calmly. "I decide what is forbidden." "You decide nothing when you act against the good of the Empire." Tay's crystalline skin darkened with anger. "This human has corrupted you, made you weak, made you question thousands of years of tradition. He made me remember what it means to live." The council erupted in angry murmurs. Day could feel the hostility in the room like a physical weight. These beings had existed for thousands of years, and they saw him as nothing more than a threat to their perfect, eternal order. "The law is clear," another council member said. Either the human must be exiled permanently, or you must renounce your bond with him. Publicly, before the entire empire. Nira's hands clenched at her sides. And if I refuse? Then the council will have no choice but to declare you unfit to rule. Day's blood ran cold. They were forcing her to choose between him and everything she had built over 3,000 years. It wasn't really a choice at all. He started to speak, to tell them he would leave willingly, but Nira's hand moved slightly, a warning. She wasn't done yet. I have ruled this empire longer than some of you have been alive, she said, her voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. I have guided our people through wars and disasters. I have made decisions that preserved our civilization when it stood on the brink of collapse, and now you question my judgment because I chose to save a life? Not just any life, Tay said. A human life. A species that barely knows how to travel between stars. A species that wages wars over resources and beliefs. A species that will drag us down into their chaos if we let them. A species that knows how to feel, Nira countered. How to hope, how to love. Things we have forgotten in our pursuit of perfection. Love is weakness, Tay said flatly. It clouds judgment. It makes beings irrational. It is everything we evolved beyond. Day couldn't stay quiet anymore. You didn't evolve beyond it. You just got so old and scared that you forgot how. The council turned to stare at him. If looks could kill, Day would have been vaporized on the spot. The human speaks out of turn, Tay said. He proves his lack of civilization. Maybe, Day agreed, his heart hammering. But at least I'm honest about it. You sit here talking about perfection and tradition, but really you're just afraid. Afraid that if you let yourselves feel anything, you might realize how empty your perfect lives have become. He pushed himself out of the medical chair, ignoring the pain in his chest. Hana was in the gallery above, and he could see the panic on her face. She was mouthing the words, "Shut up," over and over, but Day was done shutting up. Your Majesty, he said, turning to Nira, I need to say something. Day, don't, Nira whispered. Her eyes were wide with something that might have been fear. Please. I have to. He took a breath, then turned back to face the council. You want her to choose between me and her throne. You want to force her to give up either her duty or her happiness. But that's not fair, that's not right, and it's not what's best for your empire. You know nothing of our empire, Tay said coldly. Maybe not. But I know what makes people strong. And it's not isolation. It's not living alone in a perfect, empty existence. It's connection. It's having someone who makes you want to be better. Someone who reminds you why life is worth living. Day walked forward until he stood directly before Nira. His legs were shaking, but his voice was steady. For 3,000 years you've ruled alone, he said to her. You've been strong and wise and perfect. But you've also been lonely. And you deserve more than that. You deserve someone who sees you not just as a queen, but as a person. Someone who makes you laugh. Someone who challenges you. Someone who would die to protect you. Day, Nira breathed. What are you doing? And then, because he was either the bravest or the stupidest human in the galaxy, Day Kim dropped to one knee. The council chamber went silent. Somewhere above, Hana made a sound like a dying bird. Captain Wu, watching from the human section, dropped his data pad. Day didn't have a ring. He didn't have anything prepared. All he had was his heart and the absolutely insane conviction that this was right. Nira, he said, his voice carrying through the silent chamber. I know I'm just a human. I know I'll live maybe 60 more years if I'm lucky, which is nothing to someone like you. I know I can't give you wealth or power or anything you don't already have. He looked up at her, at those ancient eyes that held nebulas. But I can give you laughter. I can give you conversations that make the years feel shorter instead of longer. I can give you someone who will stand beside you, not because they have to, but because they choose to. Every single day. Tears were forming in Nira's eyes. Actual tears. The council members leaned forward in shock. What I'm trying to say is... Day's voice cracked. Will you marry me? The silence that followed was absolute. Day could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears, could hear Hana's sharp intake of breath from the gallery, could hear the soft hum of the ship's engines. And then Nira spoke, one single word in her own language. Her voice was soft and wondering and filled with something that sounded like joy. Hana's voice echoed from above, shaking with emotion. She said yes. Oh my God, she said yes. The council chamber erupted. Half the Valorans were on their feet, some in celebration, others in outrage. Ambassador Tay's crystalline skin had gone almost black with fury. "This is madness," he shouted. "You cannot marry a human. It is against every tradition, every law." "Then we will change the laws," Nira said. Her voice was clear and strong, and she was smiling. Actually smiling. "I have given 3,000 years to tradition. I think I have earned the right to choose my own happiness." She pulled Day to his feet, and for the first time, she took his hand in hers. Her crystalline skin was warm against his, and where they touched, soft light began to glow. "You are all dismissed," she told the council. "I have a wedding to plan." As the council filed out, some angry, some amazed, Tay stopped in front of them. His eyes were cold. "This is not over," he said quietly. "There are those who will never accept this union, who will see it as the beginning of the Empire's end." "Let them try to stop us," Day said, squeezing Nira's hand. "We'll be ready." After everyone had left, Nira turned to Day. "That was the most foolish, reckless, wonderful thing anyone has ever done. I have a talent for that. You understand what this means? The challenges we will face? The enemies we have made?" "Yeah," Day smiled. "But we'll face them together. That's kind of the point of marriage." Nira laughed, that beautiful crystal bell sound that he loved. Then she did something she had never done before. She leaned down and pressed her forehead against his. "I do not know how to do this," she whispered. "How to be with someone, how to share my life. I have been alone for so long." "We'll figure it out together," Day promised. "One day at a time." Above them, in the gallery, Hana was still standing in shock. Captain Wu had his head in his hands. "We're either going to go down in history as heroes," Wu muttered, "or as the people who started an interstellar incident." "Why not both?" Hana said weakly. Down on the floor of the council chamber, Day and Nira stood hand in hand, two beings from different worlds who had found something impossible and precious. Love that crossed the stars themselves, and in the shadows, their enemies began to plot. The news spread across the galaxy in hours. A human had proposed to the Valoran queen, and she had said yes. The response was immediate and chaotic. Earth's government sent 17 emergency messages in the first day alone. The president wanted explanations. The diplomatic corps wanted protocols. The military wanted contingency plans. Everyone, it seemed, had an opinion about what Day had done. "They're calling you the Starlight Groom," Hana said, scrolling through her datapad. "Also, the fool who charmed a queen, humanity's greatest diplomat, and my personal favorite, that idiot who's going to get us all killed." Day groaned. He was sitting in the human quarters of the Valoran ship, trying to process everything that had happened. "What's Earth's official position?" "Officially, they're cautiously optimistic and supportive of improved human-Valoran relations." Hana looked up. "Unofficially? They have no idea what to do with you." "Join the club." The Valoran Empire was equally divided. Some celebrated their queen's choice, seeing it as a bold step toward a new era. Others viewed it as the ultimate betrayal of their culture and values. Protests erupted on a dozen worlds. Support rallies countered them on a dozen more. And through it all, Day had to prepare for the trials. "It's tradition," Nira explained as they walked through the royal gardens. The plants here were alien and beautiful, glowing softly in the twilight. Any being who wishes to join with a member of the royal family must prove their worth through 7 trials. What kind of trials? Tests of strength, wisdom, courage, and loyalty. They were designed thousands of years ago when Valorans still chose partners. No one has attempted them in centuries. And they're designed for Valorans, who are bigger, stronger, and basically immortal. Nira's expression was troubled. "Yes, I have argued with the council, but tradition is tradition. If you refuse the trials, they will use it as proof that you are unworthy." "Then I guess I'm doing the trials." Day tried to sound confident. He failed. The first trial was strength. Day had to move a massive stone block from one end of an arena to the other. The block was designed to test Valoran physical power. For Day, it was impossible. He pushed and pulled and strained until his muscles screamed. The block didn't budge. The crowd of Valorans watching began to murmur. Some laughed. Ambassador Tay smiled coldly from his seat. But Day wasn't done. If he couldn't move the block with strength, he'd move it with engineering. He spent 3 hours rigging a lever system using materials from around the arena. It was messy and crude, but when he finally pulled the lever, the block shifted. It took another 2 hours of adjusting and pulling, but eventually the block reached the other end of the arena. "He cheated," Tay said flatly. "He used his intelligence to overcome a physical limitation," Nira countered. "That is not cheating. That is adaptation." The council deliberated and finally agreed. Day had passed the first trial. The second trial was wisdom. Day had to solve an ancient philosophical puzzle that had stumped Valoran scholars for generations. He failed completely and admitted it freely. "I don't know the answer," he told the council. "I'm not wise enough. I'm just a guy who makes mistakes and tries to learn from them." "Admitting ignorance is the beginning of wisdom," one of the older council members said thoughtfully. "The trial is passed." The third trial was courage. Day had to enter a chamber filled with creatures designed to trigger primal fear responses. For Valorans, it meant facing illusions of the ancient predators that had hunted their species millions of years ago. For Day, the chamber showed him his worst fear: losing Nira. Watching her fade away while he stood helpless, he walked through the chamber with tears streaming down his face, but he walked through. When he emerged, Nira was waiting. "That was cruel," she said softly, pulling him into an embrace that shocked the watching crowd. Physical contact was still taboo, but she didn't care. "I'd face it 1,000 times, Day whispered, "as long as I get to keep you." The trials continued. Some Day passed through cleverness, others through sheer stubborn determination. By the 7th trial, even some of his harshest critics were grudgingly impressed. But Ambassador Tay wasn't giving up. On the night before the final trial, alarms blared through the ship. Day woke to find Hana bursting into his quarters. "Someone tried to sabotage the trial equipment," she said breathlessly. "If you'd used it tomorrow, it would have killed you." Captain Wu's investigation traced the sabotage back to Tay's supporters. The ambassador himself claimed innocence, but the evidence was damning. "This ends now," Nira declared before the assembled council. "Ambassador Tay, you have opposed this union from the beginning. You have sowed discord, and now, it seems, attempted murder. You will be removed from your position and confined until—" "No," Day interrupted. Everyone turned to stare at him. "Let him keep his position," Day said. "Don't make him a martyr. Show him that we're better than hatred and fear. Show him that change doesn't mean destruction. Tay's expression was unreadable. You would show me mercy? After I tried to have you killed? I'd show you the chance to be better, Day said. What you do with that chance is up to you. The council was silent. Then, slowly, Nira smiled. So be it, she said. But Tay, understand this. You have been given a gift you do not deserve. Use it wisely. The final trial was loyalty. Day had to declare his commitment before the entire empire, broadcast to every Velaran world. Billions would be watching. He stood in the Grand Hall, the same place where he'd first met Nira. But this time, he wasn't afraid. I'm not Valoran, he said, his voice carrying across the broadcast. I'm human. I'm flawed and foolish, and I'll probably live less than 100 years. But I love your queen with everything I am, and I promise to stand beside her, to support her, to challenge her when she needs challenging, and to make her laugh when the weight of ruling becomes too heavy. He turned to Nira, who stood watching with luminous eyes. I can't promise you forever, he said, but I can promise you every day I have. Every single one. Nira descended from her throne and took his hands in hers. That is more than enough. The broadcast ended, but the response was immediate. Across the empire, opinions began to shift. Not everyone was convinced, but enough were willing to give this impossible union a chance. Wedding preparations began in earnest. It became a diplomatic nightmare involving customs from hundreds of species. Human traditions clashed with Valoran protocols. Gifts arrived from across the galaxy, some genuine, some clearly intended as insults. Through it all, Day and Nira leaned on each other. And slowly, the galaxy began to see that maybe, just maybe, this could work. 3 days before the wedding, a ship arrived from Earth. Day's mother, Minji, stepped off the transport, took one look at her son, and immediately started fussing over him. You look thin, she said in Korean, ignoring the fact that they were surrounded by alien dignitaries. Are they feeding you properly? And this queen of yours, when do I meet her? Nira appeared, towering over Minji but somehow looking nervous. Your Majesty, Minji said, then switched to English. You take good care of my boy, yes? He is foolish, but good-hearted. Nira smiled. He is the most foolish and the most wonderful being I have ever met. I will treasure him. Minji nodded approvingly. Good. Now, about this wedding. We need to discuss the food. I cannot let my son get married without proper Korean food. As his mother and his queen began planning together, Day caught Hana's eye. She was grinning. You did it, she said. You actually did it. We did it, Day corrected. I couldn't have gotten here without you. The wedding was 3 days away. 3 days until Day Kim, ordinary human from Earth, married Queen Nira, immortal ruler of the Valoran Empire. 3 days until everything changed forever. The day of the wedding arrived with perfect weather. Or at least, what the Valorans considered perfect weather. The sky above their capital city shimmered with auroras, and the air hummed with energy. Dai stood in his preparation chamber, staring at himself in the mirror. He wore a suit that was half human formal wear, half Velaran ceremonial robes. It should have looked ridiculous. Somehow it worked. Stop fidgeting, Hana said, adjusting his collar for the 3rd time. You look good. I look like I'm about to pass out. Well, yes, but in a dignified way. Captain Wu entered, carrying a small box. This just arrived from Earth. Priority transport. It's addressed to you. Day opened the box and found a simple silver ring inside. No jewels, no fancy decorations. Just a band of metal that had been in his family for 3 generations. His grandmother's wedding ring. There was a note in his mother's handwriting. For your queen, may your love be as strong as ours was. Day's hands shook as he pocketed the ring. The ceremony was being held in the largest amphitheater on the Valoran homeworld. Thousands attended in person. Billions more watched across the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of species had come to witness history being made. As Day walked down the central aisle, he could feel the weight of countless eyes on him. Some filled with joy, others with curiosity, still others with barely concealed hostility. But then he saw Nira waiting at the altar, and nothing else mattered. She was breathtaking. Her crystalline form had been adorned with flowing garments that seemed made of starlight itself. Her skin glowed with inner light, shifting through colors like a living aurora. But it was her eyes that held him. Those ancient, wise, loving eyes. The ceremony began with Valoran traditions, ancient words in a language that predated human civilization. Nira spoke them clearly, her voice resonating through the amphitheater. Then it was time for the human traditions. Day had insisted on including them, and Nira had agreed. "I, Day Kim," he said, his voice somehow steady, "take you, Nira, to be my wife. I promise to love you, to laugh with you, to cry with you. I promise to challenge you when you're wrong and support you when you're right. I promise to be your partner, your friend, and your home, for as long as I live." He pulled out his grandmother's ring. It was far too small for Nira's crystalline fingers, but she had prepared for this. She touched the ring with her free hand, and it shimmered, growing and changing until it fit perfectly. The simple silver band now glowed with soft light, forever changed by her touch. "I, Nira," she said, her voice filled with emotion that 3,000 years hadn't prepared her for. "Take you, Day Kim, to be my husband. You have shown me that existence and life are not the same thing. You have reminded me how to feel joy, how to hope, how to love. I promise to cherish every moment we have together, however many or few they may be. I promise to be worthy of the gift you have given me, the gift of yourself." She had a gift for him, too, a pendant that pulsed with the same light as her skin. "It carries a part of my essence," she explained softly, "so that even when we are apart, you will carry me with you." The officiant, an ancient Valoran who had performed royal ceremonies for over 2,000 years, raised his hands. "By the laws of the Valoran Empire and the customs of Earth, I declare you joined. May your union bring light to the darkness and hope to the hopeless." Day and Nira kissed. It was the first time in Valoran history that such a public display of affection had occurred at a royal ceremony. The crowd erupted. Some cheered, some gasped in shock, some wept. But before the celebration could truly begin, the alarms sounded. Ambassador Tay burst into the amphitheater, followed by a group of armed Valorans. But something was wrong. Tay wasn't attacking. He was running toward the altar, toward Day and Nira. "Protect the Queen!" he shouted. "They're coming!" Behind him, a group of extremists poured into the space, weapons raised. They had waited for this moment, when the Queen would be vulnerable, when the entire Empire would be watching. But they hadn't counted on one thing: humans and Valorans standing together. Captain Wu and his security team moved instantly, forming a protective barrier. But they were joined by Valoran guards who had once opposed the marriage, joined by civilians from both species who had come to celebrate. Hana grabbed Day and pulled him behind the altar. Minji, despite being a 60-year-old woman, picked up a ceremonial staff and stood ready to defend her new daughter-in-law. The battle was brief, but fierce. The extremists were outnumbered and outmatched. Within minutes, they were subdued. Ambassador Tay stood before Nira, breathing hard. "I am sorry, Your Majesty. I discovered their plan only hours ago. I tried to stop them." Nira studied him for a long moment. "You saved my husband's life. Our debt to you is great." "I saved the Empire," Tay said quietly, because I finally understood. You were right, both of you. Change is not destruction, it is growth. And I was too afraid to see it. He bowed deeply. I will spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of the mercy you showed me. As the extremists were led away, Nira turned to the crowd. Her voice, amplified across the galaxy, rang clear. Today, you have witnessed an attack born of fear, she said. Fear of change, fear of the unknown, fear of losing what we have. But you have also witnessed something greater. You have seen humans and Velaran standing together, fighting together, protecting each other. She took Day's hand, raising it high. This is not the end of our empire. It is a new beginning, a beginning where we remember that we are not meant to exist in isolation. We are meant to connect, to grow, to love. And yes, sometimes that is frightening. Sometimes that means risking pain. But it also means truly living. The crowd erupted in genuine cheers this time. The celebration that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human music mixed with Valoran light songs. Earth food was served alongside Velaran delicacies. People from a dozen different species danced and laughed together. Minji cornered Nira at one point, holding a glass of champagne. You make my son happy, she said simply. That is all a mother can ask for. He makes me happy too, Nira said, smiling. He makes me feel alive. As the celebration continued, Day and Nira slipped away to a quiet balcony overlooking the city. Below them, lights from the celebration twinkled like stars. Are you okay? Day asked softly. I am married to a human who has turned my empire upside down, survived an assassination attempt at my own wedding, and discovered that my greatest enemy became an ally. Nira laughed. I am more than okay. I am happy. She leaned against him, and he wrapped his arms around her as much as their size difference allowed. What happens now? He asked. Now we rebuild. We create new laws, new traditions. We show the galaxy that different species can truly unite. It will be difficult. There will be more resistance, more challenges. Sounds exhausting. Yes. Nira kissed the top of his head. But we will face it together. 5 years passed. The Valoran Empire transformed under Nira's rule and Day's influence. Human-Valoran cultural exchange programs flourished. Joint research facilities produced breakthroughs in technology and medicine. Trade routes opened. Alliances formed. Day and Nira adopted 3 children from different species, creating the strangest and most loving family the galaxy had ever seen. Their household was chaos, filled with laughter and arguments and the beautiful mess of life. Hana became Earth's permanent ambassador to the Valoran Empire. She eventually married a Valoran scientist because apparently falling for aliens ran in their friend group. Ambassador Tay became one of their strongest supporters, working tirelessly to promote understanding between species. And humanity? Humanity finally had a place among the stars. Not because they were the strongest or the smartest, but because they remembered how to hope, how to love, how to take impossible chances. On their 5th anniversary, Day and Nira returned to the balcony where they had stood on their wedding night. The city below had changed, human architecture mixed with Valoran design now. Children of multiple species played in parks that hadn't existed 5 years ago. Do you ever regret it? Day asked. Choosing me? Changing everything? Nira looked at him with those eyes that held nebulas and smiled. Ask me in another 1,000 years. I won't be here in 1,000 years. No. Her smile turned sad. But the changes you helped create will be. The hope you brought will be. The love we shared will be. She pulled him close. That is more than enough. Above them, a fleet passed by. Human ships flying in formation with Valoran vessels. A sight that would have been impossible 6 years ago. A sight that was now normal. Day Kim had proposed to an alien queen. and she had said yes. And in doing so, they had changed the galaxy forever. Not through war or conquest, but through the simple, radical act of loving each other across the stars.